Yes! Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is today. And welcome back. I hope your week is unfolding oh so beautifully. You're accomplishing everything you set your mind to, and you're excited because tomorrow is Friday. We're excited about it, but we're not there yet. We got some business to attend to. Boy, oh boy, did we have a reversal today. Yesterday, there were liberals all over the country screeching in joy because of a tariff victory. I saw Tish, I saw Hochul, I saw a bunch of them all just doing cartwheels and backflips because our country can continue to be hollowed out without any tariffs. And then the reversal of fortune has come, and we're going to go through it. So we got a bunch of tariff updates today. Quick preview on what's coming up. Then we'll get into it. This is the conclusion of the tariff order that came out from the International Trade Court. And we'll go through it, but not before we see what came down from the Court of Appeals, because you'll see this one, boom, in a very short order, they said, you guys are stayed. Your little ruling there, not going to be in effect for the time being. And we'll see what Trump said, because Trump and the DOJ, man, they filed this immediately, an emergency motion for a stay pending the appeal. And so we'll see what their arguments were and why the Court of Appeals found that there's some merit to what they had to say and has at least paused the cancellation of the tariffs for the time being. So we're excited about that. We'll go through it. We got a lot of reading to do. You can see this one's a nice 124 pages here. We'll hit the highlights and see what else is in the record. But all that's coming up before we turn our attention to what's happening with some of Trump's officials. National Economic Council Director was speaking about this. Peter Navarro, he came out. And Caroline Leavitt was delivering some serious conversational points today out at the White House press briefing room. So we'll spend some time on the tariffs. It is the big story on the day. And so we'll see what's happening there. Then we'll round it out with a little bit of Dan Bongino update, because, man, he was out and Kash was out yesterday, and they were both having conversations, I think this morning too, and they were talking with everybody about the Epstein files and about secret hidden files that just popped up out of nowhere. And we saw this morning on the members only stream that Chuck Grassley also declassified or released this declassified report from the FBI that shows exactly how they hid files inside the systems by just renaming them and more. So we'll go through all of that. We're very excited that you're here. A reminder, this weekend, we got Eric's House virtual tour, and we're going to be talking about myths that a lot of people believe happen to be true when it comes to grief and loss, and how you can help somebody if you know somebody who's experiencing some grief or loss. And we've got a virtual tour coming up on Saturday, 11 a.m. Arizona time, 2 p.m. Eastern time. Would love to have you come join us. Click to register, absolutely free. And we had a meeting today after the members only stream this morning, walk through the presentation that we're all going to be reviewing, and it's going to be great. So come check it out. It's going to be a lot of fun. Members on Saturday, of course, we'll ask you to come join us on Saturday. It's going to be great. ericshouse.org, ericshouse.org. Please sign up for the event because I want to see you there, so we can do some hope and healing together. All right, now, we got some other business. Hey, and a heads up, Locals is down, so Locals is not working. We tried to figure it out. It's definitely down. All right, so Locals friends, hopefully you can join us on Rumble, X, or on the tubes, and we'll see you there. All right, so without any further ado, my friends, let's get into business on the day, because here is some good news coming out from the Court of Appeals. And here is the order. What did I just do? We're in the middle of a show. How am I closing tabs right in the middle of the show? Golly, Rob, have you ever done a live stream before? Apparently not. All right, we're ready. We got it open. Trump's tariffs are back. The liberals were celebrating the demise of one of Trump's key foreign policy tools being ripped away from him by unelected federal judges. But that was very short-lived, because this order has now come down from the United States Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit. And it's saying, hey, you three judges who said that Trump doesn't have the power to issue tariffs, even though Congress gave him that power in the law, you are stayed, and the tariffs will remain in effect until further notice. And we're going to come back to this very short order from the Court of Appeals, but we also want to see exactly what was sent in by the Trump DOJ. You can see this one was the emergency motion that was coming in to stay this order from the lower level court. And that order was a whopper, okay? It was a 49-pager, and this is what it looks like. Here's the concluding paragraph on this. But if we go all the way up to the top, you'll see this was decided by 3 judges, Gary Katzman, Timothy Reif, and Restani. And actually, 2 of these were appointed. One of these judges was appointed by Trump. Another one was appointed by Reagan. And another one, I believe, was appointed by Obama. But this was a big lawsuit filed in this bizarre court called the United States Court of International Trade. And they came out with a big, fat opinion. And we're going to see that it's all stayed now. So I don't want to spend a ton of time on it. But what they say, the crux of this, is that Congress ultimately delegated too much power to Trump. They said, well, there's this thing called the non-delegation doctrine, and Congress can't give up all of its powers over to the executive branch. And Congress did a lot of that with the tariffs. And so they basically just said, well, we think Congress didn't mean to delegate as much as Trump has taken from them. And they said that that is a basis for the cancellation of the tariffs. In other words, Trump didn't have the power. He took too much, then Congress delegated. We're going to see why that is wrong and why Congress gave him a ton of power because they're too weak and feckless to do anything about this, which is why they gave the tariff power to the president. So we'll talk about that. The other main issue here is that they just apparently don't think that Trump's justifications for the tariffs meet the standard that is necessary to declare an emergency or to do something to impose these global tariffs. And so the court's really substituting its opinion for Trump's opinion, saying that, well, we think you did more than you're allowed to do. In other words, they're not reading it with a benefit to Trump. They're not reading it saying, if the law gives you the argument that you can do that, then you're within the confines of the law. It's not saying what the law is or whether this is a possibility or feasible under the law. It's substituting their judgment. It's saying, we don't like your decision because the ramifications are too broad, the economic consequences are too big, and we have to round you up. So here is what they wrote in conclusion from the trade court. They said, the court holds for the foregoing reasons that the law, the IEPPA, okay, Trump is going to respond to this and be successful, as we'll see. They say, the lower court judge, they all got stayed on this. It says it does not authorize any of Trump's tariffs, worldwide tariffs, retaliatory tariffs, or even the tariffs that were targeting the trafficking of illicit materials into our country. The worldwide and retaliatory tariff orders exceed any authority granted to the president by the law to regulate these means of tariffs, which is like ridiculous. Come on. Exceed any authority? Give me a break. The trafficking tariffs also fail because they don't deal with the threats set forth in the orders. Okay, so the judge is substituting their opinion for it. Trump says, we're going to hit China with tariffs because they're sending in fentanyl to Canada and to Mexico. And they say, well, no, you can't do that because the tariffs on China or the tariffs on Mexico and Canada aren't going to do anything to stop people from dying of fentanyl in the United States. And these judges just substitute their conclusion on that chain for Trump's, but they're not elected. They're not in the Department of Homeland Security. They don't run the Secretary of State's office. So they just substitute their conclusions. They say, well, we don't think his policy is going to address the threats, and so therefore it's not related enough. Now, this conclusion entitles the people suing the VOS company to judgment as a matter of law. The court further finds there's no dispute of any material fact, and so everything Trump claims about trafficking, about national security, about having our industries hollowed out and all that stuff is really irrelevant. They just say, nope, it's not. It's factually inaccurate. And so they're going to enter summary judgment against the United States, which is just wild because historically, you would have this deference to other branches of government. You'd say, let me just read the law. If you can't, you might disagree with Trump's policy, you might disagree with the decision, but if you can read it in conjunction with the law and you say, yeah, it fits. I may not like it, but it fits. That's what judicial review is. Judicial review is not judicial FU, where you get to say, this is my policy that I don't like, and I'm going to substitute my policy for your policy. In other words, if Trump says, we're going to use tariffs because people are dropping dead of fentanyl and it's being poured in through our borders, a judge doesn't have the ability to undermine that conclusion because he doesn't like it. So here they write, there is no question here of narrowly tailored relief. If the challenged order are unlawful to the plaintiff, they're unlawful to everybody. So not only the person who is suing, they win, everybody wins. All the tariffs everywhere are invalidated. It says all of these duties and imposts come from the United States. They need to be uniform. And this court is just rich because they're constantly citing the Constitution as they crap all over it. But Article 1, Section 8, it was essentially delegated over to the executive branch by the IEEPA. And so they default back to the Constitution when it's convenient for them and ignore it when it's not. Plaintiff's motion for summary judgment is hereby granted by the panel, and the motion is denied as moot. So you win. Like, you don't even have to fight this any further. You win as a matter of course. And that is what dropped. Now, obviously, the Court of Appeals put a big fat stay on that, but not before they got the filing from President Trump and the DOJ. You can see here's what they dropped. On appeal from the terrible trade order that came down from the Court on International Trade, Trump appeals this, filing his emergency motion for a stay pending appeal and seeking an immediate administrative stay. And he won on this. Here is what the argument was. Writing, all right, Court of Appeals, you're not going to believe this. Yesterday evening, the Court of International Trade, called the CIT, issued an unprecedented and legally indefensible injunction permanently barring the United States from implementing tariffs involving dozens of countries, from the UK to the People's Republic of China to the EU. And these are tariffs that are central to the president's foreign policy and economic agendas. Now, the court permanently enjoined the president's executive orders regarding all the tariffs and compelled the executive branch to issue administrative orders unwinding the tariffs in 10 days. Undo everything. Because the president is no longer the president. They write, this Court of Appeals, should immediately stay that judgment, and they did, which is rife with legal error, and it upends the president's effort to eliminate our exploding trade deficit and reorient the global economy so it's on equal footing. Now, the injunction from these lower judges unilaterally disarms the United States. And this is what was so irritating when all the lefties like Kathy Hochul and Letitia James and Chris Mays from Arizona, when they were all out here, they were celebrating this. Yeah, perfect. We can keep hollowing out our industries in favor of foreign crap in America and doubling down on the hollowing out of the working class. And it's wild to watch the Democrats double down on that in spite of everything. But that's what these judges did, unilaterally disarm. So the president doesn't have the right to do this. Didn't even try to find in his favor, didn't even wait on briefing, just summary judgment. Nope. Trump's tariffs are canceled. Says this is being done in the face of long-standing predatory trade practices of other countries who, notwithstanding the injunction, are free to impose putative tariffs on us. So the court says, wait a minute, they can hit us with tariffs, but you can't hit them back. Are they looking out for America at all, or looking out for their bottom lines? The injunction threatens to unwind months of foreign policy decision-making and sensitive diplomatic negotiations at the expense of the nation's economic well-being and our national security. Now, the political branches, not the courts, make foreign policy and chart economic policy, right? The courts are not set up for this, but the injunction inserts and injects the CIT group, the court, into the center of the nation's foreign policy. They run things now. And they disable the president from using a critical tool we all knew he was going to use. He talked about it on the way in. And that Congress even authorized him to wield, because Congress doesn't want to handle tariffs. They can't handle anything. They can't even pass a budget in the middle of time-sensitive negotiations with multiple foreign countries over future trade agreements. Now, Trump's DOJ explains, so grave are the stakes for our country, the nation, that 4 members of the president's cabinet took the extraordinary step of submitting declarations to the trade court before its ruling, substantiating the immediate catastrophic harms that would flow if they stopped the president's tariff authority. They don't care. That's the job. That's the whole, they're like, oh, It's going to wreck a bunch of his work? Perfect. We'll all sign it. The Secretary of Commerce came in and explained that an injunction would undermine recent agreements and would jeopardize the dozens of similar arrangements that are being negotiated. Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary, he agreed. He said, if you issue an injunction on these tariffs, it could shatter ongoing negotiations with dozens of countries and even embolden others to retaliate against the United States. The U.S. Trade Representative, who also submitted a declaration, sent this into the court who didn't care. They said an injunction could leave trading partners free to further distort the conditions of competition for U.S. exporters. Everybody else can punch us in the face, but we have to just stand there and take it. And if we want to defend ourselves with tariffs, courts say you can't do that. Just eat it, America. Just like they want you to eat the gangbangers who are eliminating our kids. And the Secretary of State warned that an injunction would cause significant and irreparable harm. Rubio said this specifically to the court. They don't care. If the injunction remains in effect, the successful agreements the president has reached with multiple countries could be immediately unraveled. But remarkably, Trump's DOJ says to the Court of Appeals, the lower level court, the three of them, they issued a permanent injunction and they didn't even consider these declarations. This documents quintessential irreparable harms to the government, and they didn't even read it. Nor did the court even discuss the equitable requirements for even issuing a permanent injunction. Remember those 4 factors we talk a lot about? Didn't even go through it. This is a textbook error that alone warrants vacating or staying the injunction. In other words, they didn't even do any analysis before they issued the injunction. Those 4 factors we talk a lot about here. Irreparable harm. What does the public think about it? Can what are the damages and whether you can, whatever the 4 factors are, you know what they are. And they don't even analyze it in the entire form, in the order, skipping over it. It's like saying you're convicted of a crime without presenting any evidence of the elements of the offense. You go, what? How can you convict me of that? Like you say, I stole something, but you haven't identified the property. You haven't identified the building. You haven't identified I was even in there. On the merits, the injunction rests on a dangerously flawed interpretation of the tariff authority that the president has. Since 1941, they educate them, Congress has authorized the president to regulate importation of foreign goods whenever he declares a national emergency in the law. This court's predecessor, in fact, in an opinion by this court's first chief judge, upheld President Nixon's invocation of that authority to impose broad tariffs in response to a global balance of payments deficit. That was done in 1975. You guys wrote about it. Did you forget about that? And Congress knew of that holding when it incorporated the operative statutory language into the new statute, which gives the president essentially the same power. That was decided back in 1984 and also referenced in 1981. Remember when you said that? Now, it's difficult to imagine, they say Court of Appeals, how these dumb judges could ignore all of this. We can't even imagine a clearer authority for the president to invoke the current statute, which is the IEEPA, to impose the exact same sort of tariffs that Nixon imposed. Like Nixon did it, Congress updated the statute and said, yeah, great job, you can do that clearly, and put it in the law. So they're doing it. But the court, flouting that prior precedent, stopped Trump's tariffs so that Trump, even though Trump determined those tariffs are imperative to protect our economy and our national security. Now, a stay pending appeal, which is what they're asking for and they got, and an immediate stay are necessary to prevent irreparable harm to our whole country that these 3 judges sought to impose. And a stay is not going to harm them at all. Who can be made whole through a refund? If they say, well, we paid more for our products coming in or whatever, we'll just pay them the difference. You don't get to invalidate every single tariff nationwide because some party was complaining and you didn't even analyze whether an injunction was appropriate under the traditional factors. Saying we'll just pay them the difference. Absent at least interim relief from this court, the United States is also going to seek Supreme Court relief, if you don't grant this, to avoid irreparable national security and economic harms. Now, of course, the anti-tariff people are opposing the motion, and we continue. Now, they give us the background here. Trump's DOJ, writing to the Court of Appeals, Federal Circuit says, All right, Congress has long delegated to the president the authority to regulate imports during national emergencies. A long time. Why? Because Congress can't do it. You might say that the Constitution gave it to them, Article 1, Section 8, in the enumerated powers and all that stuff, but Congress then hands it off. Now, you may not like that. Rand Paul doesn't like that at all. He wants Congress to take it back. Well, Congress can go do that. They can go take it back if they want to. They can pass some new legislation and do it. They won't, but they could. And until they do, this is the law. And Trump was following it. Now, the 1917 Trading with the Enemy Act authorized the president, okay, long history of this. They like to go back and say, well, for 70 years we had abortion. Okay, well, look, since 1917 we had this. Said the president could regulate the importation of foreign goods during wartime. Saying later, Congress amended that to allow the president to regulate importation. Okay, so they got rid of the during wartime. So you can now just regulate importation of foreign goods, not just in wartime, but during any other period of national emergency as the president declares. Oh, that comes from the First War Powers Act back in 1941. Then in 1971, President Nixon invoked that, the TWEA, and he imposed tariffs in response to a balance of payments deficit, a trade deficit. We're paying more than we're making. He goes, oh, crap. Finding that a prolonged decline in the international monetary reserves of the United States had seriously threatened the nation's trade and international competitive position, and thus its security, Nixon declared a national emergency. And he said 10% tariffs on eligible imports. He did that in 1971. And then in Yoshida, this court's predecessor upheld the tariff. And this court's like brand new. I think they got created or were brought in 1980. We'll see where this goes. But they have morphed into a bunch of different things over the years. Now, in the 1970s, Congress revised the framework. They enacted two statutes. They came out with the National Emergencies Act. It authorizes the president to declare an emergency for all the purposes of all acts of Congress, can exercise those powers. The NEA does not substantively limit the president's determination of when a national emergency exists. Instead, Congress retained oversight of those determinations through its power to terminate a declared emergency through a joint resolution. Okay, so if Congress says that Trump's tariffs are bad, Congress can do something about it. But why can one private company just sue in this court and then invalidate the tariffs nationwide? There's a mechanism to challenge Trump's orders. It's called Congress. All they have to do is pass a joint resolution. So Rand Paul can stop crying about it and rally support for this if he wants to do it, and put this on a set timetable and get it done. Otherwise, an emergency to terminate is coming from the president. Now, second, Congress amended the TWEA by removing the president's peacetime emergency powers under that act and replaced them with the IEEPA. So added it all up, more additions. Here's what they put in this new law back in 1977. The IEEPA's operative provision authorizes the president, here's the law cited, 50 U.S. Code section 1702A1B, says regulate any importation of any property in which any foreign country or national thereof has any interest, or any property subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Dang, that's pretty broad. Seems like you could drive a truck through that. Seems like Trump could justify basically anything under that statute. That's what Congress does. Now, Section 1702's language draws directly from the prior statute. And the Supreme Court said in this case, Dams versus and Moore, they said that it is essentially the same as it was under the TWEA. But the new law also specifies what are different in terms of conditions and procedures for the exercise of authority. So they make some changes. The new law provides that the president's Section 1702 authority, quote, may be exercised to deal with any unusual and extraordinary threat which has its source in whole or substantial part outside the United States to the national security, foreign policy, or economy of the United States, if the president declares a national emergency with respect to that threat. And guess what? That's what Trump did. And under that provision, you may not like Trump's tariffs. You may think they're bad policy. They might hurt all the Democrat pocketbooks and all the funding being cut off to their grifting friends is going to hurt their bottom line. But that doesn't mean that it's illegal. That doesn't mean it's outside of what is plainly written in the text right here on the page. So here's the factual background. Trump says this in appeal. All right, these cases concern various presidential emergency declarations and actions taken by Trump to address these emergencies. Let's go through them. Canada and Mexico. Boom, Trump comes in January 20th. Golden age is upon us. The president declares the flow of contraband drugs like fentanyl and the resulting public health crisis to be a national emergency. And the trade court said, no, we're okay if your kids are getting killed by fentanyl. Not a big deal. It's not actually a national emergency, and tariffs aren't going to do anything to stop it. Oh, thanks, Judge. Did anybody elect you for that? Are you in a position where you can investigate any of this? No, you're not a political person or a political branch. You're a court of law. Those are not decisions for you to make. Saying the president expanded the scope of this emergency to cover conduct by the Canadians and the Mexican governments who are poisoning our people. The president invoked his power under the IEEPA, 25% on Canada and Mexico, saying, get your affairs in order down there and stop bringing in the precursors to fentanyl. So then the president subsequently issued additional executive orders that paused the tariffs, right? Citing their immediate steps to alleviate the rolls, later even exempted from tariffs all Canadian and Mexican goods that qualify for duty-free entry under the agreements. So the tariffs were used as a tool. They were imposed. They were lifted as the objectives were achieved. Canada, Mexico, they have conversations and agreements, and the tariffs are working to create an outcome. Oh, the court says you can't do that anymore because we're the president now. So China, they say also. Trump came in. The president further expanded the scope of this national emergency. Guess what? Also covers China now. He found that the PRC, quote, had subsidized or otherwise incentivized chemical companies to export fentanyl and other precursor chemicals to produce synthetic opioids that are sold in the United States, killing everybody. The PRC provides even support and safe havens to transnational criminal organizations that launder the revenues from the production, shipment, and sale of these opioids. That many companies go to great lengths to avoid law enforcement, and they bring in fentanyl and other drugs, and they're killing people all across America. Now, as with Canada and Mexico, Trump says to the Court of Appeals, Trump determined that the PRC's conduct constitutes an unusual and an extraordinary threat, which has its source in substantial part outside the United States to the national security, foreign policy, and the economy of the country. And so Trump came out and issued a 10% duty on most goods imported from China. And then that number went up to 20%. He says, oh, you still got fentanyl coming in? Oh, you don't like 10%? How about 20? How about that? Then he imposed duties on low value imports because they hide their substances in these little smaller packages to avoid detection that are then shipped over here. So then Trump said, all right, look, we're going to also do reciprocal tariffs. We got Canada, Mexico, China, then reciprocal tariffs. Trump came out, declared an additional emergency. He says, you know, our prior politicians have been morons, and they have not done anything to bring in reciprocity in our trade deals. We're just getting hollowed out. We print money. We buy foreign crap. We have no industry anymore. We've got no good jobs. Everybody said learn to code. And the whole country is tired of it. So Trump is rebalancing these agreements. Disparate tariff rates, non-tariff barriers, and all of these things are suppressing domestic wages and consumptions. They're causing trade deficits. It's bad. The president further determined that large and persistent annual trade good deficits have led to the hollowing out of our manufacturing base and a litany of other serious harms caused because of a lack of reciprocity, because we just get hollowed out. We're just an economic zone. Who cares about actually building things in America? As long as they can just send us some cheap crap that falls apart in 2 days, no problem. The president accordingly acted to rebalance the global trade flows, imposed 10% tariffs, also imposed country-specific tariffs as well. Then on April 9th, Trump suspended most country-specific tariffs for 90 days. Again, a tool. Come negotiate with us and you won't get hit with this. But he did raise the tariff imports for the Chinese PRC because they retaliated against us. He suspended the tariff against them for 90 days because they are working to facilitate the national emergency. Now, all that is the background. Let's talk about this current case. This appeal, Court of Appeals, coming up from the trade court, concerns two cases. In VOS Selections, which is one of the parties suing, there's a bunch of cases being consolidated here, companies challenged the reciprocal tariffs, and then they invalidated them for everybody. They sought a temporary restraining order, they wanted a preliminary injunction, and they wanted summary judgment, which means you just win by default. No hearings, no trial, you just win. A 3-judge panel denied the TRO and then consolidated the briefing on the injunction and summary judgment. Now, meanwhile, a bunch of states, led by Oregon, they sued in a different case. They wanted to cancel the reciprocal tariffs and the contraband tariffs because Oregon got a lot of liberal crackheads up there who apparently don't want to be hit with those drug trafficking tariffs up there. The same court panel consolidated the cases and we had hearings in both. So then yesterday, the trade court, the sit court, issued a single opinion in the cases. They held that the law's authorization, which literally says the president can regulate importation, doesn't apply to reciprocal tariffs for some reason. They called them worldwide and retaliatory tariffs. The court noted that Yoshida's holding, saying that you actually can regulate importation, is just about a duty surcharge. But they admitted that you actually can do that. Like, it includes the power. It says you can actually impose a duty surcharge. The president can't do that, the court said. But it didn't authorize Trump to impose whatever tariff rates he deems desirable, because such a reading would create an unconstitutional delegation of power. So what? The law says the president can declare a national emergency and gives him the power to literally regulate importation, but you can't regulate it too hard. You're regulating it harder than Congress wanted you to. That's not what the law says. There's no upper limit to that. The court substituted their judgment. They said, well, your tariff rates are too high. We like our tariff rates better, right? They substitute their judgment. It's not judicial review. The court further held that Congress's enactment of the Trade Act, which includes the authority to address balance of payments issues, right? They say, the court even analyzed 1974 law. They said that it includes the authority to address this, and it implicitly removes those powers to impose remedies that were granted during a bigger national emergency. Implicitly removes that power, is what the other court said. Now, as to the contraband tariffs, the court focused on the provision that the president's powers under that statute. They said, yes, you may exercise to deal with foreign threats, but that this emergency could be reviewable, right? The judge can say, actually, I don't think you have an emergency here. You say there's an emergency? Actually, no. They said that the drug contraband tariffs do not deal with, right? The judge says, you imposing fentanyl tariffs on China, it's not going to deal with dead Americans. They substituted their judgment because they do not evidently relate to the foreign government's efforts to arrest or detain bad actors in their jurisdictions. Instead, it just wanted leverage to create leverage and wanted to create deals through negotiation. Yeah, because Trump can't go into China and conduct the arrests. Did you know that, trade court? So what else do? Do you want to bomb them to stop them? Would you like to just declare war on them? Or maybe you can use leverage, just like what happened here. And did the law anywhere say you can only impose tariffs except for non-leverage causes or something? Does it say that? You can't use tariffs to increase your position of negotiation. Does it say that anywhere? No, the court just made it up because they hate Trump and America and they don't want him to have any success in his administration. So then turning to the remedy, the lower court, the CIT, stated that the tariff orders would be vacated and their operation would be permanently enjoined, not just to the one company who actually sued, but to everybody in the whole world. The CIT further compelled the United States to restore prior tariff rates within 10 days, and they declared that there is no question here of narrowly tailored relief because the challenged orders are unlawful as to all. So 3 maniac judges in a trade court that nobody's ever heard of before now have more power than the president to decide, actually, it's not a national emergency. The fact that your kids are being poisoned is your problem, not the president's, and we're just going to let that happen. Obviously, they got stayed, and that's tremendous news. Now, here's the argument. Here are the factors that we can never remember, but they exist, and apparently the trade court can't remember them either. Whether the people who sued are making a strong showing on the merits. 2, whether there's going to be an irreparable injury if this company who got hit with the tariffs is stayed. Is issuance going to substantially injure either party, and where does the public interest lie? They say, first of all, the lower court didn't even analyze that through their hearing in their order, which is a legal error at the outset. But in addition to that, they say, first of all, Trump is clearly authorized by the law. Congress passed the IEEPA, and the text, the history, and the binding precedent confirm that Congress empowered the president to impose tariffs in response to declared emergencies, and that these tariffs fall well within the bounds of his broad powers that Congress granted him under the law. Here's why. The Yoshida case, which also came out of this court, interpreted the substantively identical text of the predecessor statute. It's been morphed in many ways over the years. It said that the power to regulate importation exists, and it held that includes the power to impose an import duty surcharge, clear as day, cited in case law. Now, that holding in that binding case tracks the ordinary meaning of the word regulate, which means to fix or establish governing principles or laws. Now, that interpretation controls here based on the cases. And if you have any questions about that case, you can just read the statute, okay, court? Congress removed any doubt about this interpretation by incorporating it into the language after the case. They said literally you can regulate importation. They shoved it in the statute there as the statute developed, saying Congress is presumed to be aware of an administrative or judicial interpretation of a statute. In other words, we presume Congress knows what it's doing. When Congress adopts the language that was from a prior case, we presume they know why they adopted that. Indeed, the House report on the IEEPA, when it came out, even cited Yoshida and explained its holding before. But the court seemingly agreed, the lower level trade court, that the IEEPA authorizes the president to impose some tariffs, right? They said, well, you can do some, but it says it doesn't authorize the president to impose these tariffs. Great lines here. Based on the major question doctrine and non-delegation concerns. This is manifestly wrong. Yeah, it's right. It's the court says, well, you do have some power. Okay, great. So we can do it. Yeah, you can, but you can't do that. You just said we can. Yeah, but not that though. Okay, well, what's the limit on that? Do you see any other limits? They haven't identified it. Okay, just because you don't like the heft of the policy decision doesn't mean it's illegal or unlawful. The major questions doctrine addresses the particular and reoccurring problem of agencies asserting highly consequential power beyond what Congress could have been understood to have been granted, right? Saying, actually, this agency is set up to do this thing. You can't do that. That's the president's job. So you can't just delegate that away to some other agency because this is a major question. And the president can't assign Hunter Biden to run the country. But those concerns dissipate when here Congress delegates the authority directly to the president, which is literally the most accountable official in the government. So there's no concern about no one being accountable, which is why we have such a problem with the independent federal agencies that are just set up that have zero accountability and nobody can be fired. Further, Trump says to the Court of Appeals, The concerns animating the major questions doctrine are completely inapplicable here. That doctrine counsels skepticism. You should be skeptical when an agency claims to discover in a statute some new power to regulate a significant portion of the American economy. It's like CDC comes out. It's like, actually, we're in charge of everything now. So lock your business down, take this product that was made for you to buy and consume. You have no liability, no recourse. They just take over everything, right? You say, wait a minute, are you allowed to do that? Are you allowed to just dictate that we stay in our homes because of some state power or something? They said, yes, we can. You want to sue to keep your gym open? Too bad. You want to sue because your hair salon has been closed down? That's too bad. Just eat it. You're not, who do you think you are, an illegal alien? You don't have no rights here. And those agencies are being reined in. Trump is firing people and closing them down. We saw that with the Merit Service Protection Board. We saw that with the rest of them. Now, here, the IEEPA is on its face a broad, deliberate delegation of power to the president. It's not to some agency, which is what that is for. It is in conjunction with foreign policy and national security, areas that implicate the president's expertise and independent constitutional authority. Now, similarly, there's also this concept closely related called the non-delegation doctrine. It says the Constitution says that's yours and you can't delegate it, and this is within your prerogative. The constitutional avoidance canon applies only when an interpretation raises serious constitutional doubts or the statutory is susceptible to another interpretation. But neither of those is true here. First, there is no serious non-delegation concern because Congress has not delegated unintelligible or unbounded power in the IEEPA. They set a framework. The case law rejected a prior non-delegation challenge under a prior lawsuit. You guys upheld that. You said, no, it's not. You're not invalidating the entire statute, are you? No, of course not. Okay, so Congress, they didn't just say, you have all Article 1, Section 8 powers, President. Good luck with it. No, they set a framework for this, the whole statute. The president executes the law and has the discretionary decision-making capabilities in conjunction with that exercise of power. And this court also rejected a non-delegation challenge in a similar tariff case back in 1962. They said literally, the power is to the president to alleviate threats to national security. Another case upheld in 2023. Now, every court of appeals to have considered the question has upheld the IEEPA against non-delegation challenges. They said Congress can delegate that power to the president. It's been in existence since the 1980s. And for good reason. The Supreme Court has also held that the non-delegation doctrine is inapplicable in foreign affairs contexts. Oh, you're kidding. How come the trade court didn't figure that one out? When the Congress delegates authority over foreign affairs, it must, with the necessity, paint a brush broader than what it does in domestic areas. Now, regardless, the IEEPA grants are explicitly defined and circumscribed, right? It's not an unbridled grant of power as they frame it. They say, no, the president has limitations. There is a particular type of threat, and it's limited to certain things Congress thought were appropriate. Now, the president asserts not unlimited tariff authority, but tariff authority to deal with emergencies once certain conditions are met, and those conditions have been met. And Congress retained the power to oversee the president's determination of an emergency and his chosen response. If they don't think it's an emergency, they can pass a joint resolution to unwind it. But why should some private companies and 3 judges invalidate the entire scheme across the entire world? These statutory restrictions strike a careful balance between affording the president the authority to address the exigencies of national emergencies and his inability to perpetuate these things indefinitely. There is a check on the power. Second, the court did not identify even a plausible construction of the text that would avoid its concern, as they should have, right? Generally, The government gives itself the benefit of the doubt. Unless it's Trump and they're doing something good for America, then the whole government freaks out and says, even Amy Coney Barrett, why didn't you act in 14 hours? Because they hate our country, apparently. Says, as discussed above, the court gave no consistent meaning at all to the phrase regulate importation. It's smacking them in the face. He has the power to regulate importation. It's right here. You want to read it again? Rather, they concluded that the importation and the imposition of tariffs sometimes qualifies as regulating importation of property, and sometimes it doesn't. Kind of depends on the nature of the tariffs. They said, but in all the most unusual situations, a single use of a phrase must have a fixed meaning. And so they're actually changing the meaning. If the power to regulate includes the power to impose tariffs, as they said it could, then the court should have proceeded deferentially to assess whether those tariffs related to declared emergencies. Okay, that is judicial review. Hey, the law says this. Trump is doing this thing. Can I make that fit within the reading of the law, even if I hate the reading of the law, even if I don't want that to happen? Yes, Trump can do it. It's in alignment with the law. Great. You defer to them. Instead, the court asserted the power to refashion the whole law and their core operative provision so that the tariffs will sometimes be about property and sometimes not. The avoidance canon does not allow courts to rewrite statutes to pick their favored meaning. They admitted, yes, Trump can impose some tariffs. They just didn't like these tariffs. That doesn't matter. They don't get that decision. Finally, the court construed this section of the act. They said the act literally says, quote, it grants the president authority to impose restricted tariffs in response to international payment problems, including large and serious balance of payments deficits and unfair trading practices. As they said that statute, which says the president can do all of those things, like read it. This grants the president the authority to impose restricted tariffs in response to international payment problems, including balance of payments deficits. Exactly applies to what Trump did. We've got trade deficits. There's a payment problem. We think this is a large and serious problem that's going to wreck our country. The law says it. But what did the court do? They said that if you read it, it limits any such authority in the broader emergency powers under the IPEEPA. They say that doesn't make any sense. That reasoning totally fails. Courts approach federal statutes touching on the same topic with a strong presumption that everybody else got, right? You sue because of COVID, they just laugh you out of court. You have no rights at all. Get out. Because the government has a presumption of validity. They have a presumption of good faith. They have a presumption of being right, even if your due process is being stripped away from you without any hearing, any cause at all. No one cares. But if they do something good for America, then the presumption goes against the people doing the good thing for America. Now, only by carrying a heavy burden can they establish that some other statute displaces this statute. Now, that burden is not satisfied here. The IEEPA's emergency powers are merely complementary to the powers in another section, which are both narrower and broader, and saying the court flouted basic statutory interpretation principles in reading this as an exception to the other broad powers, right? So then they go in there like, well, this says like restricted somewhere. All right, so it's not limit, and they just make their own substitution of judgment. Now, the court also further erred in second guessing the president. They can't do this, and they can't decide that these tariffs are not applicable to the national emergencies that the president has declared. We elected the president. We didn't elect these judges. The president has the benefit of the entire executive branch, all of his cabinet officials telling him about the state of the planet. These judges are not in that position. They only get to measure with a measuring stick that is fixed. It's called the law. Can you fit this in here? Yes, you can. Great. Courts cannot properly review the president's decision to declare a national emergency. Actually, we don't think it's a national emergency. What? You're a judge, which implicates quintessential foreign policy and national security judgments entrusted to the executive. As the case law recognized, Courts will not review the bona fides of a declaration of an emergency by the president, obviously. Matters relating to the conduct of, and if you don't like Trump's emergency, everybody keeps screeching, well, the courts are who's going to stop Trump if he doesn't? Congress can. Just impeach him. You don't like it? Just go complain to your representatives. They'll impeach him. It's like on a hair trigger anyways, on a tiny margin. Go do it. Just go impeach him. You don't have the right to create a new attack vector by exploiting judges to issue global injunctions now on Trump's trade policy. Saying these are exclusively entrusted to the political branches of the government. They are immune from judicial inquiry or interference. And the president's determination of what constitutes extraordinary and unusual threat is incapable of judicial review because it is discretion laden and there are no judicially manageable standards because they're judges, not in the executive. Now, the lower court did not question the president's judgments as to the existence of the national emergencies, they say, but they invalidated the contraband drug-related tariffs because they literally said this in their stupid opinion. Well, Trump's tariffs are not actually dealing with the emergencies, and so since it's a bad policy, we're going to invalidate it. How do you know they're not dealing with it? Because you read a Washington Post article somewhere? You don't get to substitute your judgment for that. Courts cannot scrutinize whether the president's proposed method is justified from a policy perspective. They're not the president. That scrutiny is inconsistent with the broad statutory text and the deference traditionally accorded to the president in this sphere. And in another case, this court called Prime Source, this same court refused to second guess the facts found and the measures taken by the president under the law. They said the president has the power to alleviate threats to national security from imports. And where this court has entertained challenges to this action, in international trade or controversies that are highly discretionary, you are limited in your scope to even review the findings or the motivations of the president. In fact, the president's findings of fact and the motivations for the president's actions are not subject to review. You don't get to say, Trump had a bad intention. Trump was racist. Trump is trying to just get a better trade deal because he wants more money and he doesn't care about drugs. You don't get to substitute. You're not the president. Make your position known, and the political branch, if they're unhappy with the president, they can address it. Now, to be sure, Yoshida, the prior case, suggested broader review of the extent to which the action taken by the president bore a reasonable relation to the powers delegated by Congress and to the emergency giving rise to the action. But that aspect of Yoshida has been superseded. There's a whole new statute. And even if it hadn't, it still doesn't support this lower court's intrusive analysis. They say these lower courts, these three judges, they manifestly erred in fly-specking the nexus between the contraband drugs and the emergencies that Trump declared. They said, well, Trump's tariffs do not deal with their stated objectives. They said those tariffs are just creating leverage to deal with those objectives. They said, what? Creating leverage in negotiating a resolution of a declared national emergency is the central point of the entire act. The court did not dispute that the tariffs were imposed for that purpose or that they've had that effect, and its conclusion that the creation of leverage to negotiate over solutions to a crisis is not a way of dealing with this thing is profoundly incorrect. It's just idiotic. What other alternatives would you like to do there, court? What, you want to send Anthony Blinken over there and ask him to stop as an envoy? Stop poisoning us. Do you want to bomb them? Do you want to declare war? What do you want to do? This is what the law is for. Now, the court could also stay this injunction for a simple independent reason. They said they didn't even do any legal analysis in this case. The CIT issued a sweeping, unprecedented, economy-threatening permanent injunction against the challenged tariffs without even going through those four-factor test factors. Indeed, the court said not a word about the equitable requirements of irreparable harm. They didn't even analyze balancing the equities at all. They just made it up. The Supreme Court has repeatedly held that courts lack authority to depart from the traditional equitable factors unless Congress says otherwise, and Congress didn't do that here. And by the way, if they would have analyzed the equitable factors, we would have won. The remaining factors overwhelmingly favor us, the government. A stay on this order is necessary to prevent the injunction from causing extraordinary, immediate, and irreparable harm to our economy and our national security. And it's not going to harm them at all. The factors thus weigh decisively in our favor, and the public interest and the balance of the equities supports us. As members of the president's cabinet have even attested to you, this court's order would irreparably harm the economic and national security of the United States. Commerce. He explained, the injunction would undermine the United States-UK trade deal that's already been negotiated based on the back of the Tariff Authority. Plus, the recent China trade agreement would also jeopardize dozens of similar arrangements with foreign trading partners that are also being negotiated. That's the point. This is a court attempting to cause direct harm to the executive branch. It's a judicial insurrection. They issued it. They got stayed and backhanded legally by this Court of Appeals. But we know what they tried to do. Each of these negotiations is premised on the credible threat of enforcement of the tariffs. And if this court strips that out from us, foreign counterparts will have reduced incentives to reach meaningful agreements. See how pathetic this looks to America, by the way? Hey, China, we're going to hit you with a tariff. Actually, we're not. You're like that little Shiba Inu, like kind of like in the corner, saying, oh, actually, they're not going, China saying they're not going to hit us with tariffs because there are 3 judges who maybe we bought off or something. They said no. We look pathetic. And this court is trying to do that, right? They're trying to cause that. Actually, Trump has no power at all because 3 judges said he doesn't, that nobody's ever heard of ever. Now, that could leave the American people exposed to predatory economic practices by foreign actors, maybe like China. Now, the Secretary of State, Treasury, and U.S. Trade Representative similarly explained these are ongoing negotiations, and we haven't reached deals with them yet. But if we can't use this power, our harms are going to be plainly irreparable. Absent a stay, even if this court ultimately upholds the tariffs, this permanent injunction may have compromised a delicate, time-sensitive foreign negotiations, perhaps irrevocably. It could be ruined. And absent a stay, the government will receive reduced revenue that it will be unable to recoup if the tariffs are ultimately upheld, which is another irreparable harm. And we've been making some good money on these things. And I think for the first time in recent memory, the American population says we're on the right track. So, of course, a judge would come in and try to wreck it. Now, conversely, these companies that actually have to pay these tariffs would not suffer any cognizable harm if they are stayed and this tariff is allowed to continue. If tariffs imposed on them are ultimately unlawful, we can just refund them. They paid the fee for the tariffs. We'll pay them interest and more. But that's only the harm. They'll be out some money. If you invalidate our tariffs, the entire globe has to reorient itself. The balance of the harms is not even close here. And so at minimum, this court should stay the injunction. Article 3 requires that the remedy must be limited to the inadequacy that produced his injury. The court can't invalidate everything everywhere to everybody. Only the people sued, but that's what the court did. Saying traditional equitable principles require this to be no more burdensome than necessary. And the Supreme Court of the United States has stayed relief running solely to non-parties that was unnecessary to the case. Now, this lower court ran roughshod over all of those principles, declaring that there is no question here of narrowly tailored relief. What? Because the tariffs would be unlawful to everybody? The mere fact that a court might reach the same legal conclusion as to non-parties does not justify entry of relief wholly unnecessary to remedy the plaintiffs who are a party to this case. And so, in conclusion, the Trump DOJ on appeal says this court should stay the judgment pending appeal and grant an immediate administrative stay. Great filing by Daniel Winnick. Shout out to the Civil Rights Division over there for crushing this decision. They wrote this in like 12 hours. Okay, so well done. I mean, this got filed like instantly. So shout out to Daniel, man. That dude was working overtime yesterday, and it was a nice filing. Happy to read it. Now, what we see is the Court of Appeals granted the stay. Here it is. From the United States Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit, victory for the Trump administration. The Court of Appeals came back down and said, actually, tariffs are back. In a per curiam decision, an opinion of the court from these judges, circuit judges, they say, in the above captioned cases, the United States Court of International Trade entered judgment against the United States and permanently enjoined certain executive orders from Trump, imposing various tariffs, saying those are now paused. The U.S. government moves to consolidate its appeals from those rulings and is asking for a stay of the judgment and the injunction pending the appeals while this court is considering those motions. We just read through that request. The United States requests this in front of this court, and so therefore, the Court of Appeal says it is hereby ordered that Trump's motions to consolidate the cases are granted. The appeals are consolidated such that only one set of briefs should be filed moving forward. The revised caption is reflected in the order. And number two, it is also ordered that the request for an immediate administrative stay is granted. Tariffs are back to the extent that the judgments and the injunction entered in the lower court are temporarily stayed. This might come back a different way until further notice while this court considers the motions papers. Now, the parties are also directed to immediately inform this court of any action taken by the Court of Trade regarding the pending stay motions. And that reads kind of aggressive to me. It's like, you let me know if this lower court does anything on this. Let us know. Kind of like a heads up to this court. Don't try to be sneaky about this. Don't try to do a Boasberg and launch discovery. Don't try to do a Judge Zenas and order returns and facilitate. Don't do it. You notify us if they act the fool. Now, the appellees, the trade people, are directed to respond to the U.S. motions no later than June 5th, and the United States may reply to this on June 9th, and then we'll take it from there. So, a major victory for the Trump administration, temporary as though it may be, but the insane ruling from the trade court is now stayed as it should be. And we had a lot of reaction on this. So we had Kevin Hassett, National Economic Council Director, was asked about this decision over on Fox, and here's what he had to say.
We're very pleased with the ruling. We expected it. The bottom line is that our U.S. Trade Representative, Jamieson Greer, is the best trade thinker in the business, that President Trump's case is ironclad, and the appeals court took almost no time at all. In fact, we're surprised it took till the end of the day for them to overturn this previous ruling. The bottom line is that President Trump's trade team has their eyes on the horizon. They understand that we've got to make America great again by making trade deals fair, by advantaging U.S. producers and U.S. farmers when they sell things in foreign markets, and leveling the playing field at home for foreign products that are brought here. And so this is a big victory for the president. And I just got to say that you also can see, if you just look at the data, that President Trump's vision is working, that we've received $50 to $60 billion in tariff revenue since we've started the tariffs. Inflation has gone down. In fact, if you think about it, the automakers for foreign auto companies are running ads saying they're not going to increase prices. So it's working exactly the way we thought, and we're very pleased with the decision today.
Yeah, and I think you can see the same pattern emerging. It's like, if they mark up our drugs like 1,000%, right? It's $1,000 a month for the GLPs or whatever in the United States, but in Europe it's like $78 or whatever those figures are, because the numbers are what they are. So then you say, okay, actually we're just going to increase the tariff on all those imports. You can just eat into your own margins a little bit. Okay, so rather than charging us 1,000%, you just charge us 900%. How about that? And you just eat some of the tariffs, and that's essentially what's happening. So here is Peter Navarro, another economic advisor for the president, explaining.
The emergency is $1.3 trillion a year going abroad, $18 trillion of American wealth so far transferred into foreign hands, and millions of jobs lost, hundreds of thousands of factories gone. That's the emergency. And the American people understand this. Okay. Main Street understands this. Wall Street is in denial about this, and this rogue court apparently doesn't think that having Main Street America dying from fentanyl and not having jobs is an emergency. We think it is, and it damn well is.
It is clearly, and that's why people elected Trump. We're tired of the cheap fake money that they just print that gives us woke college papers from Harvard that educate everybody about transgender international comic book studies or whatever. That's not something valuable to the people of the country. We'd like buildings. We'd like energy. We'd like functional schools. We'd like jobs to manufacture things here and build our own communities and have nice, fruitful, happy lives without having our dollars evaporate out from under us every single time the government wants to spend some more money. So Karoline Leavitt came out before the stay was out, and man, she was fired up. Here's what she said today in the White House press briefing room.
Last night, the Trump administration faced another example of judicial overreach. Using his full and proper legal authority, President Trump imposed universal tariffs and reciprocal tariffs on Liberation Day to address the extraordinary threat to our national security and economy posed by large and persistent annual U.S. goods trade deficits. The United States has run a trade deficit of goods every year since 1975. In 2024, our trade deficit in goods exceeded $1 trillion. Everybody agrees this is unacceptable. President Trump is delivering on his promise to fix this problem, and he has taken a long overdue and much needed bold stance for American workers after decades of our manufacturing base being hollowed out. The president's rationale for imposing these powerful tariffs was legally sound and grounded in common sense. President Trump correctly believes that America cannot function safely long-term if we are unable to scale advanced domestic manufacturing capacity, have our own secure critical supply chains, and our defense industrial base is dependent on foreign adversaries. Three judges of the U.S. Court of International Trade disagreed and brazenly abused their judicial power to usurp the authority of President Trump to stop him from carrying out the mandate that the American people gave him. These judges failed to acknowledge that the President of the United States has core foreign affairs powers and authority given to him by Congress to protect the United States economy and national security. Congress had created the National Emergency Act to provide the congressional framework to strike down improper IEEPA use. And any questions over whether President Trump improperly imposed these IEEPA tariffs were already adjudicated in Congress following Liberation Day. Congress firmly rejected an effort led by Senator Rand Paul and Democrats to terminate the president's reciprocal tariffs. The courts should have no role here. There is a troubling and dangerous trend of unelected judges inserting themselves into the presidential decision-making process. America cannot function if President Trump, or any other president for that matter, has their sensitive diplomatic or trade negotiations railroaded by activist judges. President Trump is in the process of rebalancing America's trading agreements with the entire world, bringing tens of billions of dollars in tariff revenues to our country, and finally ending the United States of America from being ripped off. These judges are threatening to undermine the credibility of the United States on the world stage. The administration has already filed an emergency motion for a stay pending appeal and an immediate administrative stay to strike down this egregious decision.
And that was granted, rightfully so. So Karoline Leavitt explaining what's happening, and we'll keep our eye on this. We're going to see what the trade tariff haters file in a response, and Trump will, of course, have a reply. See what the Court of Appeals does. Keep our eye on this one. But as it stands, the underlying opinion that everybody was celebrating, Letitia, Kathy Hochul, Chris Mays, the rest of them, they were excited over an opinion that didn't even do any legal analysis and was contrary to decades of prior law. So we feel pretty solid about where this is going. If Congress doesn't like it, they can take that power back. But the rules are what they are now. Judges can't undermine it because Trump is using them to actually do something useful for America. We're going to keep our eye on this one, my friends. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do. All right, we got one more update on the day, and we're talking about Dan Bongino. Secret and hidden FBI files? Dan says, yeah, maybe. At least they were hidden from him. And this is very curious because not only is Dan talking about this, but so is Kash Patel, talking about more follow-up to the Maria Bartiromo interview where they said Epstein's case is basically closed. Kash came out on this. Now, the secret in the hidden files also showed up in a Chuck Grassley, Senator Grassley from Iowa, newly declassified and released report that shows exactly how the FBI was hiding files inside their file system, just kind of labeling it, marking it hidden so it wouldn't show up in search results and more. And so it starts with Dan Bongino, saying we walked into the FBI and we found the rooms.
Of Jim Comey, because he cannot control himself and his emotions. He is a child. He is a big child. And let me tell you one more thing. Look at Jim Comey, who wants you to believe. Jim Comey taking a shot at the president. Oh, look at me. I'm such a victim. The president's going after me. He's making a ton of money on this book. The only person that got prosecuted was the president. Jim Comey, we're finding stuff even now. Wait till you read the stuff that's coming out.
Does he still have loyalists in the building? Because when I hear the FBI director saying, you guys are finding boxes that are hidden, okay, how does that happen in the Bureau?
Well, we were there a couple of weeks, and luckily there were a lot of people up there who grabbed us by the arm the minute we came in and said, thank you for being here. You know, we need to talk. There are people there who are really horrified at what happened. And there was a room, and we found stuff, a lot of stuff.
A hidden room.
I wouldn't call it hidden, but hidden from us at least, and not mentioned to us. And then we found stuff in there, and a lot of it's from the Comey era, and we are working our damnedest right now to declassify. And just so you know, because I get the public, I totally understand people saying, well, do it now. The process is not all the information is ours to declassify. Some is other intelligence agencies. It's not, we literally can't do it. Once that gets done and that gets out there and you read some of the stuff we found that, by the way, was not processed through the normal procedure, digitizing it, putting in FBI records. We found it in bags hiding under Jim Comey's FBI. Quickly, you're going to be stunned.
The shells on the beach. Can you not talk to social?
Okay, so we found files. He sounds like they found physical files, like bags and boxes of crap that are stored away in some room somewhere that may or may not be hidden. Now, there's more evidence of this. This morning on the members only stream, we talked about the entire Nellie Orr scandal, courtesy of Chuck Grassley, but he declassified this in the Senate on the Judiciary Committee, which he heads, dropped this one. And what's inside here shows you exactly how the FBI not only probably hid stuff in boxes and bags underneath desks, but also in the file system, saying initial investigation into this Nellie Orr person, who is the one responsible for Crossfire Hurricane, shows that the FBI buried stuff in their systems under a prohibited access status, okay? So in other words, there's you can mark a file as being restricted. If you do that, then the file is restricted and you search for it. You say, hey, search for Rob Gouveia, boom, pops up. Yep, bunch of files. They're restricted. You can't access them. It precludes investigators from accessing them. But prohibited means you can't even detect them, okay? Even relevant serial numbers don't show up. In other words, when search terms that exist in the prohibited access status cases are searched in Sentinel, their little software, that particular search will give a false negative Sentinel search response. You search for Epstein, it says don't have it. Yes, you do. It's prohibited. So that exists, right? So what Pam is saying, I can believe it. I can hear him and Dan saying, look, there's all these little nooks and crannies and crevices. This came out in 2019. It's about Nellie Orr. They had a whole team go and investigate it. The SCO team advised that some or all of the cases related to Trump-Russia collusion had been migrated from prohibited status to restricted status, so you can see that they exist, only so that investigators could identify it using Sentinel searches. At that time, FBI investigators were not granted access to those cases, but they could see that the search terms were found in non-viewable serials. So in other words, investigators are incapable of identifying relevant evidence because it's all been marked prohibited by the feds. So the incoming people can't even see it. You go in and fire everybody, but they've marked it all prohibited. You don't even know it's there. Given the number of relevant search terms required to run against this, and given that they know it's impossible to see everything, they asked for permission to get it. And what's interesting is that reportedly another team official declined to give those serial numbers because he said they're just not relevant to the assessment. Okay. So the FBI is still sitting, I would imagine, on just a tranche and troves of records that somebody just needs to unhide. Just unhide it so we can read it. Now, here is another clip from Dan. He was talking about Epstein and whether Epstein unalived himself.
Those two cases obviously are of significant public interest. I'm just telling you what we see in the file. I just want to be crystal clear on this. I am not asking anyone to believe me. I'm telling you what's there and what isn't.
Right.
There is nothing in the file at this point on the Epstein case, and there's going to be a disclosure on this coming shortly. We are working through there is video. That is something the public does not.
There's video of him killing himself.
No, not the actual act, but the entire MCC Bay. It was only one camera. There's video that when you look at the video, and we will release, that's what's taken a while on this. We are working on cleaning it up to make sure you have an enhanced, and we're going to give the original so you don't think there were any shenanigans. You're going to see there's no one there but him.
Right.
There's just nobody there. So I say to people,
I thought the cameras were dead. I thought the cameras were shut off. They all malfunctioned when the guards fell asleep.
well, Tom, if you have a tip, let us know. But there's no DNA, there's no audio, there's no fingerprints, there's no suspects, there's no accomplices, there's no tips, there is nothing. If you have it, I'm happy to see it. There's video clear as day. He's the only person in there and the only person coming out. You can see it.
So I thought I feel like I'm living in bizarro world. I thought they told us the cameras were off, that there was a malfunction, nobody could see anything, and now there's some other video from somewhere that they're going to release, and they're going to enhance it for you, but also release the original. Oh gosh. Now, to be honest with you, I think a lot of this is a red herring. You know, it's like, okay, look, first of all, if Epstein didn't kill himself, then we would have a follow-up question to that, which is who killed him and why. Obviously, that begs a lot of additional questions. But even if Epstein did kill himself, we still have a lot of questions about the case. Like, that's not the conclusion of the case. We wonder why Ghislaine Maxwell is the only person in federal custody at the moment when Jeffrey Epstein was flying around with Bill Gates and Reid Hoffman and a bunch of other libs. We want to know that part of it too. So that's great. You can release the video on the unaliving of Epstein, but we hope there's a lot more to that. So I don't really know what's going on over there at the FBI. I think that it feels like they're kind of scrambling to come up with a cohesive story on this, but it's just not landing. Here is what Kash said about a lot of this.
You know, you were on with Maria a few weeks ago, and you said this.
What we can do now is continue to put out the documents and the information that these people withheld from the American public. You're about to see a wave of transparency.
What do you mean?
Just give us about a week or two.
All right, we're almost at 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So this is about Crossfire Hurricane. You just talked about that, all that you've been learning. Can you give us a little of that wave of transparency?
Absolutely. So just quickly on Crossfire Hurricane, that is a continuing production. We have found material, and I'm the Crossfire Hurricane guy, that I didn't even know existed in FBI holdings.
So there's been held someplace else, or?
That's been stashed away in locations that people thought we wouldn't find it because we wouldn't know to look for it there.
And as we read, it's not just physically, they're also doing it digitally across Lord knows where.
As promised with my congressional partners, I'm working with Congress on constitutional oversight because that's what the American people deserve. And those documentations have been flowing to Congress nonstop on a rolling basis since that interview. But more importantly, people have had questions about January 6th and whether or not there were FBI sources, not agents, sources on the ground.
Yeah, and not just FBI sources, Kash. Homeland Security investigations. I'm so tired of the J6 stuff being cabined off to the FBI. Mayorkas was running half the operation that day.
During January 6th. And I told you I would get you the definitive answer to that. And we have. And we are in the process, again, of working with our partners to divulge that information. And it is coming. And I will tell you this. The answer to that question will surprise and shock people because of what past FBI leaders have said about it.
Former FBI Director Chris Wray eventually admitted to Congress there were 26 FBI confidential human sources in around the Capitol January 6th, but not actual agents. Can you say that's true? Are there more than that?
Way more.
What you're learning from that?
I can say that that is definitely a piece of the truth. Why it took a ton of time for and questioning in Congress for the director to get that point is what I'm trying to eliminate from the FBI. If Congress asks you a question under oath, whether or not there were sources in around January 6th at the Capitol, you as the director of the FBI need to know that and not deflect and give a DC answer. You have to be prepared for that. And that's the answer we're giving. That's the answer Chris Wray should have given.
And eventually everybody's going to know the whole picture.
Yeah, because the American people deserve that. And look, no one's more frustrated than me. Remember, I was chief of staff of the...
It's not like Christopher Wray was just a moron, okay, who didn't have good data that was provided to him at his weekly Monday morning stand-up. Heck, how are our metrics today? How many of it? That's not it. The guy was not an honest broker and was enabling all sorts of Trump attacks to occur within the FBI. It's not an informational supply chain problem, Kash. You had a corrupt director who enabled corrupt investigations. So I don't care if you think he had his flashcards out of order or something. It's much deeper than that problem.
The Department of Defense on January 6th, we said that we were ready, and the president had previously authorized the National Guard to be there days in advance. I spent 2 years, a small fortune, grand juries to testify to the truth. And what happens now, years later? We were right. Bowser and Pelosi rejected that offer. And instead of figuring out how to prevent security lapses like that ever again, the American public spent tens of millions of dollars and countless hours on TV listening to conspiracy theories because
it wasn't a security lapse, it was a setup.
Those in positions of leadership failed to tell the American public the truth.
But there is a lot of conspiracy theories out there.
There are.
The Epstein thing, you dealt with Maria, you said, as far as you know, he killed himself.
I'm telling you, he killed himself.
The other thing on the internet is the Epstein files. What's the answer to that?
The answer to that is the same as everything else. I'm not going to withhold information from the American public ever. But I'm also not going to rush to get it out there in a format in which they can't rely on it. So on the Epstein matter or any other matters, we are diligently working on that. And it takes time to go through years of investigations, years of political maneuvering, and years of cover-up to get the American people what they deserve. And that's what I'm going to give them on everything.
Yeah. And if somebody says, how long is that going to take? You know,
as long as it
we
takes.
always see investigations in Washington that end up in blue ribbon commissions, and it doesn't seem like anything comes from it. Do you think actual prosecutions will come from some of this stuff?
No.
I think from some of this stuff, when we go back and look at things like the pipe bomber case, the cocaine in the White House.
We're not talking about that.
January 6th,
not talking about
Crossfire Hurricane. The prosecutorial decisions will lay at the Department of Justice, but we are rigorously
We're asking about Epstein.
Investigating them, and I think we've developed some great leads. And I also think we're not going to wait for any blue ribbon commissions. That's up to Congress. If they want to do that, that's totally fine. They're a coordinate branch of government. But we've got answers coming on all these matters.
You promise?
I do.
Your deputy, before he became deputy, said this.
Like many people, I believe the FBI knows the identity of this pipe bomber on January 6th, 4 years ago, and just doesn't want to tell us because it was an inside job.
Well, obviously, it was an inside job, yeah. They said that the cell phone data was corrupted. All the cell phone companies, all their cell towers didn't get that one dude's cell phone number when he was out there scrolling around on his phone. And the video footage is like 2 frames per second, like somebody shot it with a potato cannon.
Why didn't they find the bomber, the pipe bomber? You
'Cause
know, they know who the pipe bomber is.
They know.
The FBI knows who it is.
Does the FBI know who it is?
The FBI, under me and Dan Bongino's leadership, has reestablished that investigations of great public importance that almost blew up the DNC and RNC in Washington, D.C., an area in which then Vice President Harris was in the vicinity of, is something that needs to be answered. And we learned that FBI leadership in the prior administration slow-rolled and basically shut that investigation off. So we turned it on. And we have some great
Why'd they
leads.
do that?
And Dan is actually going to talk about that when he does Fox and Friends tomorrow.
Okay. You don't want to give us a little something?
No, because they don't have anything. All right. So I really want to like and support these guys because we want them to do good things in office and not just revert back to stupid talking point feds. But it looks like that's where this is going as far as we can tell. Now, I hope I'm wrong. I hope that they're right, that Kash Patel comes out and 6 months from now, we got a bunch of Epstein indictments, but we're not going to get him. He didn't even want to answer that question. Soon as they asked him about Epstein, he jumped into, well, January 6th and pipe bombers and FBI and all those things. Give me a break. All right. So Kash, Dan, we need you to do what you said you were going to do. And we appreciate your honesty. We hope we get it. We'll keep our eye on it. All right. My friends, what a beautiful stream it has been. Thank you for joining us. If you're just joining us today, locals, my apologies. The locals RTMP connections were all down today. I tried for 15 minutes. It's about to throw the whole server out. But locals, hopefully you're watching us here. We'll forego the after party today since our tubes are not working anywhere. But my friends, if you are just joining us, quick recap on what we talked about. We spent a lot of time on the trade stuff. Big victory for President Trump out of the Court of Appeals in the federal circuit on the trade stuff. The tariffs are back, baby. America's back in business. And we're happy about that. We also saw some reaction from Navarro, from Hassett, and from Caroline Leavitt. And this case, I think, is a big one. So we'll see where it goes, what the reply looks like, and more. Then we talked about Dan and Kash and the corrupt FBI. It's like I can empathize with them a bit because how do you run an organization where all the files are hidden from you? And it's been weaponized for the last 40 years. I have some empathy, but at the same time, I don't like excuses, and I know you don't either. All right, so my friends, it's been a beautiful stream. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for sending in these donos and these super chats. Really appreciate you being here and supporting our work. We got some great comments. Hey, Donut's clipping for us. We got some new membos coming in. Oh, look at this real handsome boy here. Almost a Friday. Have a great day, my friends. Look at that real handsome boy. All right, what's up? Audrey Spring. What's up, Audrey Spring? Thanks for becoming a membo. Grab the members only stream from this morning, and then membos will be back tomorrow with our members only stream in the morning. Voice of the People says, hey, your stream has become my reference point for legal matters. Well done. Well, thank you, Voice. Maybe it's because I've had a bad day, but I'm about ready to write off Bongino and Kash. Well, yeah, I don't really know what they're doing, but I guess we can have some patience. All right, what's up? Charles Fritz, 6 months as a membo. Hello, Robert and watchers. Hello, Charles. Very nice to have you, my friend. Thanks for being a membo for 6 months. Rel is here. Relantel, bringing in 5 new membo friends. Thank you, Relantel, for doing this. Look who's coming in. SSG Adam Juneman here. Lady J, what's up? Bino Leon, Ken L, and Greg Ginter, gifted membos, courtesy of Relantel. Hey, Psalm 46 is here, 24/7. Says, I'd like to send some love to all judges who are on our Republican side. Justice prevails. It certainly did today for the time being. And I agree. We do want to support, we rip on a lot of judges here, but we do want to support our good judges who are actually measuring the law, not inserting themselves into the country. I am divine creation. Oh, that sounded horrible. I am divine creation. Kash and Dan cannot dispute the official narrative because the Epstein file was scrubbed before they were appointed. Therefore, in their official capacity, they can only repeat the narrative. Yeah, I mean, well, that's this. Like, if that is true, let's say that is true, that's dishonest. They should have told us the files were scrubbed. That's what transparency actually is. To say, actually, there's nothing there. Why not? Well, somebody at the FBI deleted it. Oh, so your agency has a corrupt mole inside? Yeah, it does. So maybe your agency should go away, or you should divest some of it or something. Well, it's my agency, so I got to protect it. So it's like it turns into this whole battle. If the files are gone or destroyed, we should know that. And we want to know who destroyed them and why. Thank you for that. I am Divine Creation. Don't. One side thinks that taking it sideways on trade for 49ers is par for the course, and the other knows that taking anything sideways is for losers. Yeah, I mean, there's a certain class of people who benefit from free trade, for sure. The whole group of people in this country making a ton of money off cheap Chinese crap and exploiting America. But their time is up. So we're going to revert things back to how they used to be and have a little bit more care for what happens in our country. Not so much about foreign trade policies. Texas Trav, what's up? Hey, Obama loved those Diddy parties. I heard that. They had, I think Diddy had Obama drugs, Obama head drugs. Hey, Rambozo. What's up, Rambozo79? Hey, Rob, longtime watcher here. Thank you, Rambozo. I recently wrote my first book. I'd love to send you a copy. It's a defense of modernism. Can run a free promo day if the audience wants a copy. Woo! Victor. Awesome, brother. Hey, so check this out. Irony of Ideas, A Voice of Reason. Congrats on publishing a book. That's a big lift. Says, A Voice of Reason is a bold defense of modernism and a piercing critique of today's cultural and political discourse. Interesting. In a world of emotional activism, identity politics, and intellectual relativism, this book reasserts the principles that once guided human progress, which is truth as our guidepost, reason as our compass, and freedom as our foundation. Amazing! Victor, I'd love a copy. But I'd also buy a copy too. I mean, I'd love to support your work, of course, but I'd like a copy perhaps signed by you. I think that would be awesome to have. That sounds like a great book, A Voice of Reason, something that I will definitely read and investigate. So thank you for that, Rambozo. Congrats on the book. Hey, Rob, they finally hit the wrong judges. Finally, the Court of Appeals did something. It's good. Nice to see it. Texas Trav is here. Says MSNBC 13 owns Dems' teeny TDS consumed brains. Tiny TDS consumed brains. Yeah, did I see that Jen Psaki is not going to have a show on MSNBC anymore? They booted her. I think I saw that headline. I don't know if that's official or not yet, but Jen Psaki, nobody liked her show. Hey, thank you, Texas. Leonard S. says, if a district court can overrule a president, that judge, in effect, becomes the president. Yeah, I saw a great Babylon Bee post today about that. They said, there's a couple Babylon Bee posts. One said that Trump is going to resign the presidency because he wants to run for judge now, since it's a more powerful position. It's true. Jason on Blast, what's up? Scott S. got gifted a membo, courtesy of Jason. Thank you, Jason. Look who's coming in. Scott S. We got Robert Fromming. We got M. Rivers, Sherry D, Kevy Kev, TPA. What's up, Kevy? Otto Mata, Howie Brown, Billy D, David Phillips, and Don Goff and JJ got gifted membos courtesy of Jason on Blast. Thank you, Jason. Al Ursino gifted is a new membo. Grab the members only stream from this morning. Hey, Jeffrey Winfrey. Thank you, Jeffrey, for the dono. No comment, but I appreciate your support. Thanks for being here. Off-Label Podcast is right next door. Says, I'm introducing a candidate for the second dumbest person alive tonight. It's going to take a lot to unseat Hank Johnson from the top spot for the Guam comment. Wow, you got somebody dumber than Hank Johnson? Wow. It's going to be a great show. Check it out, Off-Label Podcast. Hey, Tanya Hammock. What a great pick. Tanya, this is your pick, courtesy of Donut, which is this lovely pup dangling in a hammock. Thank you, Tanya, for bringing in Code Red. Thank you for bringing in Doom Bunny of Doom with new membos. We appreciate you, Tanya. Thank you. Steel Manning says, we might be past the statute of limitations on congressional perjury, but there is no statute of limitations on treason, Steel Manning. Yeah. And we had some great ideas on this morning on some other prosecutorial angles, including RICO, because the Biden auto pen was the end of the RICO scam. So you can just make that the most recent case and relate everything back to as far as you want to go, just like they did with Diddy. Hey, Jeffrey Winfrey is quoting out Whirlpool, rub some dirt on it, says, blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be broken. It's true. It's true. If you're too brittle, you might break. Rambozo, hey, forgot to leave money with the last plug. Oh, no need at all. I'm just happy you wrote a book. That's pretty amazing. Here is the link to my new book. Let me know again if you want a copy. Here's the email. And again, can run a free promo. So, I mean, I'm sure people would love that. But at the same time, I kind of want them to buy your book too, you know, so you can earn a living and write more books. So we'll have to think about that. I don't know. Maybe they can email you if they want a free copy. Otherwise, if you can support him, support him. It sounds like a good book. Don't. Hey, no way do these inferior courts hacks get to determine executive foreign policy strategy directly affecting our nation's security and entire trajectory. Yeah, and this was a global trade order cancellation from 3 judges. Is that the country we want to live in? I don't think so. Hey, it's Rice Baby. Bruce Rice Baby. Welcome to 10 membos. Thank you, Bruce. Wayne Perps is here. Proc Johnny, what's up, Brady Cohen? Taylor Dutton, Harold B. We got Siegel Gunner, Bama Gigi. We got Uniquely Rubiella Handmade, David Atho, Meme Dave Jones, and Larry Piper. Gifted membos courtesy of Bruce Rice Baby. Dun. Biltong is back. You can get your Biltong at that website, biltongusa.com. Use code Robert, 10% off if you'd like Biltong. That's the best Biltong in America. Go get it. Thank you, King of Biltong. High protein. Call me legend. Says, is this judicial coup really all just an impeachment trap by the Dem lawfare cabal to get Trump to finally lose patience and disobey a lower court order and trigger a Dem impeachment supported by the rhinos? Yeah, I think that is ultimately right. So, I mean, it's a twofold victory. If they win, then they win and they get a nationwide injunction that stops the deportations or stops the cancellation of USAID or stops the tariffs or whatever. So it's a win. And if they do win, right, and it's like taking so many shots on goal, eventually Trump can just say, no, this is a lower level district court. Obviously, I've got alternative powers. I'm going to use these things. And I think this is where it's ultimately going, is they want to impeach him. It's the only way they can remove him other than shooting him in the head. Hey, Marco Kungla. Rob, you've seen justices rot firsthand. Corruption and waste wrecking lives globally. Is a reset urgent or will it hold? Long to reform? Lay it bare. Great questions, Marco. It's a good question, man. And, you know, I think I probably swing on this one both ways. Oh, gosh. I think it's true. There are some days I'm like, all right, this is it. It's like, all right, I've had enough. And there's other days when I'm just like, just chill out. Just breathe. We just won the election. We got it's a big ship to turn around. It's a big ship to turn around. But then at other days, we're like, when we have like 3 psycho judges come out and cancel all the trade deals around the world, you just go, what kind of insane country is this? So it kind of depends on the day, to be honest with you, Marco. But ultimately, I consider myself to be an optimist. I do believe that our Constitution is a very, very powerful, almost discovery. Like I hold it in a different standard of reverence because of the balance and the structure. And I think that there's a lot of wisdom there. So I'm also skeptical about just throwing things out, right? I think there's this concept called Lindy. The longer things have been around, kind of the more value they have to them. And the things that are around for a short time generally don't. So like what would we get out of a reset? It could be way worse than what we have now. We've got the First Amendment. So we just got to win more hearts and minds, I think, ultimately. If I have to answer, I'm not ready to throw everything out yet. I'm more interested in winning the majority of the hearts and minds to our side. And if it takes a lifetime to do that, then we're going to do it. Hey, it's the Munkets. Tony Hey Munkets bringing in 10 membos. Maui Girl coming in. Jason 215. Gina, welcome. John H. What's up? Bimsy Smith. We got Lee Holmes, Katrinka Sandoval, Judge Dreads in the house. Stan, Lauren Wimbley, Michael Stetson, and Kaza Khan gifted membos, courtesy Tony Hay Munkets. Thank you, Tony Hay. We appreciate you. We got Waldo is here, bringing in James Prokop. What's up, James? Welcome aboard. Thank you, Waldo. And Bruce Rice Baby. What's up, Bruce Rice? Bringing in 10 more membos. Chop Suey is here. JCS Monroe, what's up, Motion Games? G-Nels. Tracy Quest, what's up, Mookow? William Hestelau. We got Patty Blisma, Clown World Observer, and Ogre. Gifted membos, courtesy of Bruce Rice Baby. Dun. Don is here, says, inferior hack judges, they don't get daily briefings. I mean, unless they probably would consider their Washington Post reading something like that. Yeah. Who determines these judges to be insurrectionists or indirectionists? It's a good question. I don't know. Maybe we should form a select committee. Hey, what's going on, Mark Butcher? 18 months, Mark. That's 2 babies. These rogue judges need to be removed. Yeah, Mark. We're getting to that point. And the question is, how do we do it when we have a feckless Congress? Agent Pepsi in the House. Hey, what did it cost the Dems to bribe the CIT judges? Yeah, I don't know, Agent Pepsi. Honestly, that was one of my first thoughts. I was like, okay, who paid these judges off? And I was reading about the judges yesterday. 2 of them are red judges. One of them was appointed by Trump. One of them was appointed by Reagan. One of them was appointed by Obama. And I thought to myself, wild. Like, they have the bravado. They have the stones to invalidate the entire trade apparatus for the whole planet. It's like wild times. Thank you, Agent Pepsi. Don't. Yeah, I think we should form a select committee. A select committee. And we can put a bunch of people on there, like Lectern guy. He should be the chair of the committee. Yeah. Hey, Fred Pedamonte, I've been yelling about judges for 2 years here. Yeah, I think that's true, Fred. You were OG Judge Yeller. Rhino Poop. Bondi should hand off nuisance cases to GMA, Gouveia and Membo Associates. It's not a bad idea. Or no offense intended to FSLS PC, first semester law school students PC. From Rhino Poop. Oh, I have no offense taken to me. Civil Division did a great job, but it was like shooting fish in a barrel. Oh, I see. I get it. I wasn't understanding where that was going. Like, it was so easy that even first-year law school students could figure it out. Hey, what's up? Rub some dirt on it. It says, blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be broken. Oh, I see what's going on. So Rhino Poop, Whirlpool Galaxy is watching us on 4 tabs. Hey, thank you. I appreciate that. Multi-viewing on 4 tabs. We got X, Rumble, YouTube, and Locals, which is broken right now. See, Locals is not working. We are a little frustrated with that, but hopefully it's fixed tomorrow. Thank you, Whirlpool, for watching in 4 places. 3.5. Don't. The emergency is that we're desensitized to losing. I think it's pretty shocking that most Americans are just so unplugged they don't care about any of this. It's just like they're so focused on reality TV or sports or whatever. That's like there's this battle happening about trade and tariffs and judges stealing your rights and sovereignty. I think back to the founding era. It's like they're going to impose a little tariff or a little tax on like stamps and tea. And everybody's like burning carriages outside their houses, like burning, outside the English tax collectors' houses and stuff. And now it's just like, we're going to take about 60% of everything you produce in your entire life. And when you vote to take control back of your country, we're going to take that away from you too. And everybody's just sitting around. Like, I mean, not us here. Like I'm preaching to the choir here, obviously. But outside of that, there's this silent battle for the freedom of the country. And most people are just like, well, I don't know. Rhino Poop. Just imagine if the appeals court had not responded as they did within 24 hours. The Lexington and Concord Minutemen reactors are still behind the stone walls and hedges, even in dark blue Massachusetts. It would have caused the tariff slop heard round the world. It's amazing that comment just came up because I was literally talking about the Revolutionary War. It's like, what's going to cause people to say enough already? Pinochet's helicopter tours. If unelected judicial terrorists in black robes are willing to do what they're doing right now, imagine what they're going to do to anyone right of Mao if and when the left takes power. Plan accordingly. I would agree with that, Pinochet. See, it's comments like this that make me go back the other way. Like, yeah, you better get some land, get off the grid, and just wait for the impending collapse. Because we were talking about this yesterday too, because from the Democrat perspective, if they already invaded the country with 30 million people, the country's changed forever, unless we deport 30 million people, which is not going to happen. So if you just think about that in terms of like generational change, it can be a pretty downward projection. Or that demographic shift gets, developed into liberty-loving people and the country gets back on track. But you can see how this can go both ways. Jeffrey Winfrey, blessed are the flexible, for they shall not be broken. From Jeffrey Winfrey. Great to see you, Jeffrey. Thanks for watching us over on Rumble. Hey, NTX Nancy. Rob, I love your big, beautiful brain. Thank you, NTX Nancy. Love yours back. Big hugs to the Watcher fam. I swear, y'all's presence brings me peace. Thank you kindly. You too, Nancy. It really is a symbiotic thing. And I appreciate you being here because the conversation, the fact that we can work on these things together, it brings me peace. I'm grateful for you. Michelle, civilian background checks are flawed because of this BS. A family member was denied a basic White House tour because of reasons. Never mind, he's AD military, trusted to fly armed over the White House, but a tour inside is not permissible. That's interesting. Doan says, yeah, it's real touchy now. So weird. The Pentagon was more than happy to give us a tour. We visited some of his friends' offices while we were there. White House, though, nope. Wow, interesting. I don't know what that's about, Michelle, but that does seem inappropriate. I mean, if you're trusted enough to have, to grab a weapon and storm a beach on behalf of America, they can't let you do a White House tour. Not asking to meet with Trump. Doan says, Comey dog whistling warnings of eventual retaliation towards FBI agents who carry out Kash and Dan's initiatives must be regarded as criminal behavior. Oh yeah, they're threatening everybody right now. Like Elon just left. Congress women mostly are all saying, just wait till we're back, Elon. We're going to come investigate you. They're maniacs. Pinochet, other intelligence agencies? What? Slip of the tongue, Dan? Or was it? Like what other intelligence agencies? Throwing the angry on the right a bone? Looks like my hunch may be right. Our government was neck deep in Epstein's business. Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right. That's why they gave him that sweetheart deal, which basically immunized him and even people like Ghislaine Maxwell against any further prosecutions when he got that plea deal out of Florida. It's a disgusting scam. And the fact that the people who said they were going to go expose it to us probably aren't, it's wild. And it's important, I think. It is a symptom of a much deeper problem. I know that the Epstein stuff is old news, but the cover-up makes it relevant news. If we don't have accountability or transparency in that agency, and they can't tell us about Epstein, which was a PDF file, who was embedded with the government and working with some of the most powerful people on the planet, you think they're going to tell us the truth about J6 or JFK or any of that crap? Give me a break. Tony, hey, I was told to buy a super chat so I could make it to plus 50. What is this XP nonsense? It's a good question, Tony. Hey, we're trying to figure it out too. I'm not real sure what it is, but it's critically important. So thanks for participating. Doan, who lied about the jail cams? Joe's DOJ. Yeah, it's pretty wild that they have video now because I thought we had no video at all. Thank you, Doan. We'll see if we get it. Rhino Poop says, as a long-term Bongino Army veteran, I cannot express how good it was to see Dan sit on a couch and tell a big audience that they found stuff that will make rhinos poop. He will be in the MAGA pantheon, but still tell us all about the Clinton Fantasy Island and everyone who went there, even if it unfortunately destroys the trustworthiness and character of someone who may be a MAGA hero. Our bullpen is deep. Got to eat crow when it's hot. The earlier, the better. Yeah, if you got to eat it, you don't want it to get cold. So, good to see you, Rhino. We'll see what Dan and Kash come up with. Still want to hopefully get results. Cheryl Johnson, what's up? Says, you realize the email and phone of the DOJ attorneys are on their signature. On the Kilmar case, you should share your Guatemala document. Oh, I could just call the DOJ and just say, hey, have you guys read the Guatemala stuff? Is Pam Bondi's number on there? Maybe I will call her. I got a couple things I'd like to tell Pam. Hey, thank you for the suggestion, Cheryl, and a great comment. Uncle Bozy, there absolutely are drugs that can cause suicidal thoughts. How hard would it be for the deep state to or like those energy weapons that make you feel like your skin is burning off or something? right? You just beam him through the door. Just beam his butt till he hangs himself. How hard would it be for the deep state to dose his food or liquids with behavioral altering drugs and allowing him to off himself with a sheet that should have been incapable of supporting his weight? How many times have interviewers hammered home the hopelessness of his situation? Yeah, and I think didn't the coroner say that there were some weird things in his neck bones, like those don't normally break by hangings and things? Doan, Christopher Wray, Chris Christie's political booby trap he set for Trump 1.0. That's why he's at McDonald's instead of a politically prominent position. Yeah, Christie is extra crispy. You know, he likes those deep fried whatevers. NTX Nancy, I still have faith in Dan and Kash. Give them time. All right. Okay. I appreciate, I want to give them some benefit of the doubt, but then I hear them speak and I'm like, oh gosh, we're not getting anything. Doan, the J6 bomber probe will blow it all wide open. I know. That's what they keep telling us. Look, I'm hopeful for it, Doan. I'm hopeful for it. But it was probably the FBI. I still think it was, I think it was 5'7", right? The height was 5'7", and I think that's how tall Adam Kinzinger is. So I think it was him. Rhino Poop. Kash needs to be talking to Marco and JD. Yeah, whoever's gotten them, their media game up would be good for Kash, for sure. Hey, Murphy's Law. What's up, Murphy's Law? 1 month as a member. First month's the hardest. Gets easier from there, Murphy's Law. Thanks for signing up. NTX Nancy. We need a white hat hacker to help the FBI. Well, yeah. If the FBI wants the help. Sounds like there's still a bunch of provisions over there that don't. They're just hiding documents. Hey, Liz Fletcher and Sherry Turner. Thank you both for becoming members. We're not going to do the after party today because of technical difficulties, but we'll be back tomorrow on the members only stream on Friday. We're looking forward to it. Just me says the FBI has been weaponized since July 1908. Is that when they came around? I thought wasn't it some other agency before then? Yeah, anyways. So it's easy to figure out when a federal agency was weaponized. Just look for the date it was created, aka Clay N on local proud supporter, Clay N, local proud supporter since 2021. When was the FBI was something before it was the FBI. It was like it was named something else. And I'm mad at myself for not remembering this right now. Tony Hay Munkets. Thank you, Tony Hay, for bringing in 5 new membos. Tony Hay Munkets. You rock. Gifted 5 membos. Scottish Paula. What's up, Mark Manning? Jay is here. Barbara Walsh. What's up, howdy, y'all? Gifted membos, courtesy of Tony Hay. Thank you, Tony Hay, for doing that. We got 4 babies. Thanks for doing the math for me. Wait, is that 4? I can't do it. 27 months. I think that's 3. The New York GOP pushing for a recall rule. Dems squashed it. 3 babies, courtesy of Spuds. Thank you, Spuds, for being here. That's a long time. Hey, Deluxe Knight is here. Farmer Deluxe Knight says, shout out to Mrs. Deluxe Knight. On this day, we are living in the same home, share the same love of each other, and for the next 189 days, we are the same age. Happy birthday, my love, and BFF forever. Deluxe Knight. Great to see you, Deluxe Knight. Happy birthday, Mrs. Deluxe Knight. You're catching up to your husband. Woo! That's impressive. Rhino Poop, thanks for the mutual blow-off of Steam session. We're both feeling better, I think. Thank you, Rhino Poop. Yeah, it's true. Hey, Deluxe Knight. Happy birthday to my beautiful love. On this day, same fur babies too. What a beautiful birthday. Thank you, Deluxe Knight, for sending that in. Happy birthday to Mrs. Deluxe Knight. Hopefully you guys are doing something fun and enjoyable and delicious. Happy birthday. Trumpinator, as long as they are not starving, they don't care. Yeah, honestly, the reason also it's like, can we reform the system? I think it's hard to do that also because of the apathy. People were locked in their homes, forced to take shots into their body, have their businesses, everything they've worked for their entire lives stolen right from under them. So Walmart and all the other companies could get bigger. And just sat around. Well, I don't want to get sick. There's a cold going around. Pinochet, the people seem uninterested, and you need to have been following every story for the last 5 years because it cannot be explained in 5 minutes. Makes it harder to enlighten the uninformed. Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that. And it's just overwhelming too. It's like you kind of got to build a shell for this stuff. Like most of us here are kind of pretty hardened up on this game so we can hear this. It's stressful, a lot of it. It causes cortisol and makes you mad. So a lot of people, they don't want to deal with that. But you're asking them if they engaged with this civic conversation, just please come engage in it. Because then if there's enough of us, the bad problems won't happen anymore because you'll know what's going on and you'll demand better from your own government. But it starts with accountability. Sharpie guy, I noticed a couple names that were gifted membos before. Really? Come on over to the Membo side and join us. Rob gives us his all every day. That's true. Hit the like on YouTube and join us for twice a day if you're not a Membo. Insightful and meaningful content and give new folks the benefit of a gifted Membo. Thank you, Sharpie guy, for the endorsement. We do deliver for our Membos. We do extra streams every morning. We stream on Saturday. We do after parties when they work. I know there's a lot of other memberships out there that you kind of like get like an email every 6 months. It's not us, baby. We deliver. Saintly Beginnings. I wonder if the deep state intentionally misled on Epstein's camera to keep us debating that and to keep us distracted. Yeah, it's like the whole conversation is shifted to who killed Epstein. To be honest, like if I had to prioritize that, like who killed Epstein versus who was Epstein interfacing with that were part of this international cabal who were abusing people at the highest levels of power across the planet that included the Prince of England, I'm more interested in that. Now, I think if you found out who killed Epstein, you'd probably answer that question as well. And if you had those answers, and you probably know who killed Epstein. So it's all circular, but I think that is the bigger question. And why was our FBI complicit in covering it up? And why do they still seem like they're still complicit in covering it up? Thank you, Saintly Beginnings. Hey, Bill Rob, 9 months as a membo. Happy birthday, Bill Rob. I'm officially a baby. You sure are. You've been handsome too. Good to see you, Bill. Thanks for being here. 9 months. That's a long time, man. It's a long time. And I Am Divine Creation says FBI, which was originally the Bureau of Investigation. That's right. That's right. I was going to say it was the Investigation Bureau, but that didn't sound right to me. Then they added federal. But it's a pretty new creation, isn't it? I mean, I think the Bureau turned into the FBI under Hoover. Wasn't that like after World War II? I think. I got to double check my history on that. Hey, shout out to our top 3 community membos on the day. Look at this. I don't know exactly what this means, but you should feel amazing for being at the top of this list. Muffin Rando, Wes Downer, and Don't Mind Me gifted some serious, or bringing in some serious XP points on this. And I think it's for chatting and just being amazing. So shout out to our top 10 on the day. Doan, CGI Joe, what's up, Ray Hendrick, Relantel, Hunter Veneer. We got Don't Be Hatin', Private, WJ4ND, and Don't Mind Me. Shout out. Thanks for chatting today. Thanks for mixing it up in the chat and being amazing. We appreciate everybody who is chatting on the YouTubes. Deluxe Knight, also on Rumble. Hey, says, sorry for the double up. No problem for me. I wasn't sure if the locals chat was working. Promised to take out to dinner and play 8-ball pool this weekend. Might be looking for a table for the home also. Woo! You're going to be a pool family? It's pretty cool. Pool tables are pretty cool, as long as you have room for it. Because if you like kind of bumping into the thing, it can be kind of tedious. But man, you're going to be a pool hustler too, huh? All right, Deluxe Knight. Happy birthday to Mrs. Deluxe Knight. Deluxe Knight is amazing. We appreciate you sending that in and supporting us. Happy birthday. Hope you guys have a ton of fun and enjoy. Let's say hello to our friends on X before we wrap it up on the day. My friends, we'll leave it there. And we'll take some, actually, we'll hit the locals comments too, because we are not streaming over there. So we'll see if there's any comments over there. Let's see who's over here. Hey, Fred. Fred has some music. That's interesting. Fred, what music to play on the intro? Play mine. Beautiful solo acoustic guitar. I give you permission. Everyone needs to listen. From Fred Petamonte. Oh, here it is. Fred Petamonte. There it is. Check it out. Mike R. Great news. Al Holman. Solid day's work, young man. Thank you. Thank you, Al, for saying that. It was a good day. It was a good day. Yeah, James Barca. What's up? A 49-page order. Doubt it took them much longer to write that than Trump took. Yeah, Trump got it overturned way faster than it took him to even write it. Good to see you, Jeffrey, Jerry, and TJ King. Has Nellie Orr waived her Fifth Amendment rights to incrimination? Well, if she gets charged, I think that she would re-invoke those. Yeah, if she's criminally charged. But she could be, questioned. Like, she doesn't have to testify if she's charged with a crime. Can't force her to testify. But if she chose to testify, then I think you'd be able to ask her about those things if they're a part of the record and part of the case. Yeah, so good question, TJ King. All right, my friends, thank you for sending those in. I think we probably got some comments on locals. Let's see. I know the video feed wasn't working, but let's see if we had any comments drop over here. We do. Here's one from Rhino Poop on locals. Can we determine when the 3 tirade judges went to grammar in high schools? I don't know. Long time ago. They're all up there. Maybe their ignorance can be blamed on the Department of Education. I think it was better back then. Or maybe they are escapees from the Department of Transportation, University of Traffic Dummies that was led by Pete Booty. Can we grab back the cost of time spent by DOJ attorneys on teaching these ABCs to these illiterates? Would be nice. Get a lot less rulings that are so bad. Hey, Turbo Encapulator was talking about this Nellie Orr case. We're going to have a segment on the Nellie Orr thing coming out, but we talked about it this morning as well. Turbo says, you called it corruption for Nellie Orr to fabricate part of the Steele dossier and then inject it into the FBI through her husband at the DOJ. I agree. The word corruption is extremely important because it's an element in a criminal statute in Florida about election interference. So hit her in Florida. This newly revealed information about Nellie and Bruce. Nellie was the Fusion GPS consultant. Bruce was working at the DOJ. Nellie was feeding Bruce info and then lied about it to Congress. Says the Florida statute states it's a felony for someone to corruptly deceive or influence voters. Hillary and the company used the FBI to frame Trump as a traitor controlled by Putin. That is corruption. Getting the FBI federal agency to open this up would be appropriate. Hillary got the FBI to open an investigation by hiring Orr, and to top it off, Hillary implicates herself by arranging to have leaks of the FBI opening an investigation broadcast nationwide, thereby revealing her intent to attempt to influence or to deceive the voters. Yeah, Hillary was posting about it on X via Jake Sullivan. Also, isn't the statute of limitations told or stayed when the elements needed for the prosecution are not known? Yeah, there's an argument for that you can only, like the statute starts once you discover the crime. But I don't know when they can say the government knew about that. So even the FBI report, they knew about this. The criminal referral came over from Mark Meadows back in 2019, I believe. So I think the argument would be that they knew at that time that they could have charged her and they didn't. And Bill Barr is the one who didn't do that. So I think their defense might weigh in favor of that. But the other charges, just charge her with RICO. Just like they did with Diddy, just make it up. No one cares. Apparently they just do whatever they want in Southern District of New York too. With Kash declassifying the evidence, it's now that the essential elements to prove corruption are known to the state prosecutors in Florida, so they can take action in Florida. I say Hillary's cooked if there's the will to bring her in front of a jury of Florida Gators. It's not a bad idea in Florida 104061, corruptly influencing voting. And they played both sides on that with the Steele dossier. By the way, the Steele dossier was not the Steele dossier. It was the Nellie and Bruce Orr dossier. They just fed it to Christopher Steele so that it didn't look like it was coming from the DOJ's wife, right? It was a total scam. And there should be indictments for that. Will there be? Who knows? All right, locals, thank you for sending those in. We got some other donos that came in. Hey, rub some dirt on it. Rob, with the prodding of today's problem, I had a chance to experience the other interfaces and have to highly recommend that everyone come to locals and join you there. And it's Jerry, not Jeff. Oh, sorry about that, Jerry. Where did that come in? Anyways, Whirlpool Galaxy, rub some dirt on it. Locals is nice, and especially it's even nicer when it works. Hey, HT Nicholas. Thank you, HT Nicholas, for becoming a membo and a supporter. Grab the members only stream from this morning. It was a good one. We had 3 good segments on that one, and it's still there. Rub some dirt on it, Sharpie Guy, Locals friends. Thank you for sending those in. And our Ahmads are amazing. Thank you for clipping for us. Donut, John, Carrie B, K Bean, Janek, Neuro D, Dog Digger, Just Rhonda, Elliot, and Jigam. Holding the fort down for us, keeping things nice and beautiful around here. One more reminder, it would be amazing if you joined us this Saturday. Eric's house. The link is in the description below. We're going to do a virtual tour. Your boy is going to be showing you around Eric's house, and we're going to be learning and meeting some new people and doing some cool stuff. Noon Mountain, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 Pacific. Come and join us. If you've lost somebody, or you know somebody who's lost somebody, or you're just interested in this space and you want to learn some techniques about grief, counseling, healing, Eric's house is a great organization. There's a lot of this stuff going on. So even if you're not personally hit by this, you might know somebody who is. So thanks for joining us. The link is in the description. We'd love it if you registered and came and joined us this Saturday. They're doing amazing work over there, and we want to support them. All right, so my friends, we're going to leave it there on the day. We will come back tomorrow, and we'll get into it again. On Locals, Elliot just dropped this one here. Says, in the glorious quest, Elliot, for the records for Jack Smith's oath, which is a great example of people looking for things where they don't exist, to borrow Cash's phrase, here's what we want. Mr. Smith signed, Jack Smith, signed a document, but it was discovered that when Jack Smith signed the document, the witness signature was missing. And we consulted with them to re-administer the oath to ensure procedural compliance. Here's the oath, right? Where was the witness for Jack Smith, the fake boy, not even a real boy? What will happen here? Elliot says, Attorney General, please execute the enclosed appointment affidavit which contains the oath of office. You must file a copy with this, signed by Merrick Garland and John Jack Smith. But where's the signature of the witness? Seems like it's missing. Yeah, where could it be? Thank you, Elliot, for staying on it. Hopefully we learn more about the illegitimate Jack, who's not even a real prosecutor or a real boy. All right, my friends, it has been a tremendous stream today. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for subscribing to our channel if you haven't already. Thanks for inviting a friend or family member or whoever in your life is ready to come here and join us. Thanks for inviting them over here. We will leave it there on the day. Of course, tomorrow's going to be a beautiful Friday. We're excited about it. We hope you join us. Members, we'll be back in the morning. Hopefully Locals will be working again. We'll get that fired up. Otherwise, my friends, we're going to leave it there on the day. We're going to play the outro tunes, but there will not be an after party because our tech is not working. So we'll leave it there. We'll come back tomorrow to get into it again. And in order to do that appropriately, we're going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. We brought the heat with every chat and line. Together we expose corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers. Truth on our side. Watching the watchers. We won't be denied. with nothing to hide. Drop a like and don't forget to share. And bring a friend who's ready to care. Tomorrow's lies are just today's news.